My purse hit the concrete floor of the parking garage with the kind of heavy, wet slap that usually signals the start of a terrible afternoon. I was already frustrated, juggling my car keys, a stack of probate files, my reading glasses, and a lukewarm coffee that was burning my hand. I muttered something Richard would have scolded me for, bending down to scoop up a tube of lipstick that had rolled dangerously close to the front tire. My knees gave a sharp pop, the only applause I get these days, and I reached under the bumper to grab the cap. That's when the world stopped. Right there, attached to the undercarriage of my pristine silver Lexus, nestled behind the wheel well like a dirty secret, was a small black magnetic box. It didn't belong there. It looked like a tumor on the clean metal machinery. My breath hitched in my throat, a cold, sharp intake of air that tasted like gasoline and dust. I reached out, my hand trembling just enough to notice, and pulled. It came loose with a resistant clack. A GPS tracker. The blinking red light on the side seemed to wink at me in the gloom of the garage. A silent electronic eye. Watching. Waiting. And in that cold, gray parking garage, the temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees as the realization washed over me. David. My son-in-law. The man who had insisted, absolutely insisted, on taking my car for maintenance yesterday because he wanted to keep me safe before my trip to the coast. The man who had hugged me this morning, smelling of expensive cologne and deceit, and told me to drive carefully. He wasn't protecting me. He was hunting me. I stood up, clutching that cold little black box, and for a moment I wasn't Clara Brennan, the wealthy 63-year-old widow who ran the PDA and baked award-winning 7-layer cakes. I was a target, but as I stared at that blinking red light, the fear didn't turn into panic. It hardened. It turned into something cold and sharp, like the diamond on my left hand. I remembered the smile on David's face when he handed me my keys. I remembered the way he asked about my route, his eyes just a little too focused. He thought he was tracking a confused, helpless old lady who would drive exactly where he expected her to go. He thought he was playing a game with a pawn. He was about to find out he was playing chess with the queen. I didn't scream. I didn't call the police. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the edge of the garage, looked down at the highway below where the massive 18-wheelers were rumbling north, headed for the Canadian border, and I formulated a plan that was as reckless as it was brilliant. I was going to send my location on a little vacation, and I was going to sit back, pour a glass of Richard's scotch and watch the fireworks. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. Hopefully, it's actually you and not just a tracker someone stuck on your bumper. And hit that like and subscribe button if you believe that underestimating a grandmother is the last mistake a man should ever make. Let me backtrack and tell you how I got to this point because honey, this story has more layers than my grandmother's famous cake. And trust me, that thing was a structural masterpiece. I'm Clara. I've been a widow for exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 12 days. When you lose the person who shared your morning coffee for 38 years, you don't stop counting the days, you just get better at hiding the math from everyone else. My husband, Richard, died the way he lived, efficiently. A massive heart attack while mowing the lawn on a Tuesday. He left me with a perfectly manicured yard, a life insurance policy he'd meticulously managed, and an emptiness in the house that sometimes felt loud enough to wake the neighbors. But Richard also left me something else. An education. You see, while Richard was the engineer who built bridges, I was the one who managed the tolls. He brought home the paycheck, but I was the one who decided where it went. I took his modest engineering salary and my teaching income and over 40 years of quiet, disciplined investing. I built a portfolio worth nearly $8 million. I know what you're thinking. I don't look like an $8 million woman. I drive a 6-year-old Lexus. I shop at Macy's with coupons. I dye my own hair in the bathroom sink. And that invisibility, that has always been my superpower. People look at a woman my age in a cardigan and sensible shoes, and they see grandma. They see cookies. They don't see compound interest. But money like blood in the water attracts sharks. And sometimes those sharks wear 3-piece suits and marry your only daughter. Emma brought David home 3 years ago, right before Richard passed. He was charming, I'll give him that. He had that specific kind of polish that usually costs extra, perfect teeth, a firm handshake, and the ability to listen to an old woman talk about her hydrangeas without checking his watch. He worked in wealth management, a vague term that usually means sales, but he made Emma happy. My daughter has always had a heart the size of Texas and a radar for men that was unfortunately calibrated to disaster. After the musician who borrowed money for a demo tape that never existed, and the entrepreneur who tried to get us into a pyramid scheme involving essential oils, David seemed like a safe harbor. He was steady. He was attentive. He called me Mom without it sounding forced. But looking back, there were signs. Small things. Little cracks in the windshield that you ignore until the whole thing shatters in your face. I remember one Sunday dinner about 6 months ago. We were having roast beef, David's favorite. He was pouring wine, playing the role of the dutiful son-in-law perfectly. Clara, he had said, casually swirling his Merlot. I was looking at the market trends. You know, with inflation the way it is, that bond portfolio of yours is practically losing money. You should let me take a look at it. I have access to some private equity funds that are doing incredible numbers. I had smiled, patting his hand. Oh, David, thank you. But Harold has been handling my taxes since before you were born. I think we're fine. His smile hadn't wavered, but his eyes had. Just for a fraction of a second, the warmth vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating flicker. Like a reptile deciding if the prey is too big to swallow. Just trying to help, Mom, he'd said. I hate to see you leaving money on the table. I didn't think much of it then. I just thought he was ambitious. I didn't realize he was desperate. Then came last Friday. The concern reached a fever pitch. That car is getting old, Clara, he'd said, frowning at my perfectly functional vehicle in the driveway. The brakes sounded a little soft when I moved it for you. And with your trip to the coast coming up. Honestly, I wouldn't forgive myself if something happened. Let me take it to my guy. He owes me a favor. I want to make sure you're safe. Safe. That word. It's a weapon, isn't it? Men have used the promise of safety to control women since the dawn of time. Let me keep you safe. Let me handle the money. Let me drive. I handed over the keys because I wanted to be grateful. I wanted to believe that a man finally loved my daughter enough to care about her mother. I wanted to believe I wasn't just a checkbook with a pulse. So standing there in that parking garage with the tracker in my hand, the betrayal didn't just hurt my heart. It insulted my intelligence. I sat in the driver's seat of my car, the doors locked, staring at the device. My first instinct was to drive straight to Emma's office and scream the roof down. But 35 years of teaching high school history taught me that emotional outbursts feel good in the moment but rarely win the war. If I confronted him now, he'd have an excuse. He'd say it was an anti-theft device. He'd say he forgot to tell me. He'd gaslight me until I apologized to him. No. I needed leverage. I needed to know why. Was he just tracking me? Or was it something worse? I started the car and drove. Not home. And certainly not to the coast. I drove to a truck stop off Highway 84. You know the kind, smelling of diesel, fried onions and old coffee. Places where people are moving too fast to ask questions. I parked in the back, near the long-haul section. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But my hands were steady. I walked up and down the rows of idling giants, looking for the right candidate. I needed something going far. I found it. A massive red semi-truck with Alberta plates. The driver, a burly man with a beard that looked like a bird's nest, was inside paying for fuel. The mud flap said, Calgary Logistics. Perfect. I checked to make sure no one was watching. I pretended to drop my keys near the back of his trailer. I knelt down, the wet pavement soaking into the knees of my slacks, and with a quick, decisive movement, I slapped that magnetic tracker onto the metal frame of the trailer's undercarriage. It stuck with a satisfying thud. Have a safe trip, I whispered to the blinking red light. Then I stood up, brushed off my knees and walked back to my car. As I drove away, I saw the driver climbing back into his cab. 10 minutes later, I watched from an overpass as the truck merged onto the interstate, heading north. I went home, locked the doors and waited. That night was the longest of my life. The silence in my house is usually a comfort. A soft blanket I wrap myself in. But that night, the silence was heavy with anticipation. I sat in the dark living room, watching the headlights of passing cars sweep across the ceiling, wondering what David was doing. Was he sitting in his home office staring at a screen? Was he confused why I was heading north at 70 miles an hour instead of west to the coast? Was he calling Emma, asking if I changed my plans? I kept my phone off. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of hearing my voice. The next morning, Saturday, the phone rang. It wasn't David. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, with a 403 area code. Canada. My hand hovered over the receiver. This was it. The moment of truth. Picked it up. Hello. Mrs. Brennan? The voice was deep, authoritative, clipped. This is Sergeant Mitchell Wright with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I had expected confusion. I hadn't expected the Mounties. Yes? This is Clara. Ma'am, we have a situation that requires your immediate attention. We arrested a man early this morning at a truck stop outside Calgary. He was acting suspiciously around a commercial vehicle, a semi-truck. When we approached him, he attempted to flee. My heart stopped. A man? Yes, ma'am. When we searched him, we found a weapon. We also found a photograph of you, your home address, and detailed notes about your daily schedule for this weekend. The room spun. I had to grab the edge of the kitchen counter to keep from falling. A photograph? This wasn't just about tracking me to see if I was spending money. This wasn't just surveillance. Who is he? I managed to ask, my voice sounding thin and reedy. His name is Vincent Torres. He has a record in 3 states for robbery and kidnapping. He is currently in custody and cooperating. Mrs. Brennan, he claims he was hired to intercept you. I squeezed my eyes shut. I could see Richard's face in my mind, telling me to be brave. Breathe, Clara. Breathe. Intercept me? He says he was waiting for a signal from a tracking device to know when you were isolated on the highway to the coast. He was supposed to snatch you, ma'am. The sergeant's voice softened, but the words hit like a hammer. The plan was to hold you for 48 hours. He was instructed to call your family with a ransom demand. The figure mentioned was $200,000. 200,000. It was a specific number. It was a lot of money, but it was an amount I could access quickly from my liquid savings without triggering a massive SEC review. It was an amount David knew I could get. And David would be the hero, wouldn't he? I could see the play perfectly. I would go missing. Emma would be frantic. David would step in, the calm, masculine protector. Don't worry, honey, I'll handle it. I'll deal with the kidnappers. We'll pay the ransom. Mom's safety is all that matters. He would take the money. He would deliver it to his contact. The money would vanish into an offshore account. And me? Sergeant, I asked. What was the plan? After the payment? There was a pause on the line. A heavy, pregnant pause that told me everything I needed to know. Mr. Torres claims he was supposed to release you, the sergeant said carefully. But given his history and the fact that he had no mask, Mrs. Brennan, we don't believe there was a release plan. I felt the blood drain from my face. He wasn't going to let me go. David was going to kill me. He was going to have me killed, take the 200,000 now, and then play the grieving son-in-law while he helped Emma inherit the other 8 million. Mrs. Brennan? Are you there? Are you safe? Yes, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Steely, cold, unrecognizable. I'm safe. I found the tracker. I put it on the truck. There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then a low, incredulous chuckle. You put it on the truck? Well, remind me never to get on your bad side, ma'am. That explains why Mr. Torres was so confused when he was arrested in Alberta instead of Oregon. Sergeant, I said, the man who hired him. Did Torres give you a name? He says he was hired via an encrypted app by a man he knows only as DM. But Mrs. Brennan, listened to me closely. This DM is dangerous. If Torres doesn't check in, DM is going to know something went wrong. You need to go to your local police immediately. I promised him I would. But as I hung up the phone looking out at my quiet, manicured garden, I knew I needed more than just the police. The police would arrest David. He would get a lawyer. He would get bail. He would lie to Emma. He would say he was being framed. He would say I was a senile old woman who was confused. Emma loved him. She was blinded by him. If I just had him arrested, she might hate me for it. She might believe him. No, I needed to destroy him. I needed to peel back every layer of his life until my daughter could smell the rot for herself. I went to my safe in the study. I took out my ledger. Then I called Harold, my accountant. Harold, I said, skipping the pleasantries, I need you to audit my personal checking accounts, the ones I use for bills. Go back 2 years. Look for anything under $500. Subscriptions, utilities, maintenance fees. Clara, is everything all right? It's Saturday. Just do it, Harold. Please. Then I called Susan, my attorney. I need a private investigator. The best one you know. Someone who can find dirt under a freshly paved road. I need a deep background check on David Mitchell. Clara, you've known him for 3 years. He's marrying Emma in the spring. He's not marrying anyone, I said. Just find the guy, Susan. By Monday afternoon, the picture of my life was being repainted in ugly, jagged strokes. Harold called first. Clara, you were right. It's clever. Evil but clever. There are recurring payments to 3 different shell companies. They look like legitimate charges. State Farm adjustments, Portland water surcharge, tech support services. They're all roughly $150 to $300. Small enough that you wouldn't notice unless you were looking. But Clara, the volume. He's siphoned off about $37,000 in the last 18 months. $37,000. Death by 1,000 cuts. Then the PI called. His report hit my inbox with a heavy ping. I opened the file. The man staring back at me in the mugshot wasn't David Mitchell. It was Derek Morrison. He's a ghost, Mrs. Brennan, the PI told me over the phone. Derek Morrison. Wanted in Florida and Arizona for fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. He has a pattern. He targets older women, widows mostly. He integrates himself into the family, usually dating a daughter or a niece. He gains access to the financial data, drains the accounts, and then vanishes. Usually right after a tragedy befalls the matriarch. I sat in my sunroom, the afternoon light filtering through the lace curtains, looking at the framed photo of Emma and David on the mantel. They look so happy. He looks so normal. It is terrifying how evil can wear a polo shirt and a winning smile. My daughter was in love with a phantom, a predator built specifically to destroy us. I knew what I had to do. I called Emma. Sweetheart, I said, forcing my voice to sound light and breezy. I'm back from the coast early. The weather was dreadful. Listen, bring David over for dinner tonight. I want to celebrate. Celebrate what, Mom? Emma asked, sounding tired. David's been in a mood all weekend. He's been so stressed. I bet he was. His hitman was in jail and his tracker was halfway to the Arctic Circle. Oh, just the future, I said. And I made that roast chicken he loves. Please, Emma. It would mean the world to me. Okay, Mom. We'll be there at 6. I hung up. Then I made one more call. To Detective Chun at the Portland PD. I told her everything. The RCMP report, the bank statements, the PI report. We'll be there, Chun said. Do you want us to pick him up at his office? No, I said. Come to the house at 7:30. I want him to eat dinner first. Mrs. Brennan, that's risky. I'll be fine, I said. Just be ready. I spent the afternoon cooking. I roasted the chicken with lemon and rosemary, filling the house with the scent of comfort. I set the table with the good crystal. I opened a bottle of wine that cost more than my first car. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him arrogant. They arrived at 6 o'clock sharp. When David walked through the door, he looked haggard. There were dark circles under his eyes. He was checking his phone every 30 seconds. But when he saw me, alive, healthy, standing in my kitchen, he flinched. Just a tiny twitch of the left eye. Clara, he said, his voice a little too loud. You're back. We were worried. You didn't call. Oh, I just needed to unplug, I said, handing him a glass of wine. You know how it is. Sometimes you just need to get lost. He took the wine, his hand shaking slightly. Right. Get lost. So the car ran okay. Like a dream, I lied. Although I did hear a strange rattling sound from the undercarriage. Maybe I should have you check it again. He paled. Sure. I can take a look later. We sat down to dinner. The conversation was the usual shallow waiting pool. Wedding plans, the weather, Emma's job. I watched him eat my chicken. I watched him touch my daughter's hand. I watched him exist in my home, a parasite feeding on our love and trust. I waited until the dessert course. I had made the 7-layer cake. So, I said, slicing the cake with a silver knife, David, I have a question for you. He looked up, chocolate on the corner of his mouth. Sure, Mom. Anything. Who is Vincent Torres? The silence that followed was absolute. It sucked the air right out of the room. The grandfather clock in the hall seemed to tick louder. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Emma frowned. Who? David put his fork down slowly. His eyes, usually so warm, went flat and shark-like. I don't know who that is, Clara. Is he a friend of yours? No, I said pleasantly. He's a friend of yours. Or an employee, really. The RCMP arrested him in Alberta on Saturday. He was very chatty. He told them all about DM and the $200,000. David's face went gray. I think your mother has had too much wine, Em. She's talking nonsense. Am I? I reached under the table and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I slid it across the white tablecloth. It hit his wine glass with a sharp clink. Open it, I said. David didn't move. Mom, what is going on? Emma asked, her voice trembling. She reached for the envelope. Don't touch that, Emma, David snapped. It was the first time I'd ever heard him raise his voice at her. Emma recoiled, looking at him like he was a stranger. She grabbed the envelope and ripped it open. Photos spilled out. Mugshots of Derek Morrison. Bank statements with the highlighted theft. The police report from Canada. Derek Morrison? Emma read the name, confusion crinkling her forehead. Mom, who is Derek Morrison? He is. I pointed the silver cake knife at David. That's his name, honey. Derek Morrison. Wanted in Florida and Arizona. And currently, the man who tried to have me kidnapped and killed this weekend because he owes $300,000 to a loan shark in Vegas. David Derrick stood up. The chair scraped violently against the hardwood floor. The charm fell off him like dead skin, revealing the rat underneath. You crazy old witch, he hissed. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, I said, my voice steady. I know about the tracker, David. I found it in the parking garage. I put it on a semi-truck. That's why your hitman was in Canada. He was following a load of lumber, not me. His jaw dropped. For a second he looked impressed. Then he looked murderous. Emma, we're leaving, he commanded, grabbing her arm. Let go of me. Emma screamed, pulling away. She looked at the bank statements in her hand. You stole $37,000 from my mother? You've been paying your credit cards with her money. It was a loan, he yelled. I was going to pay it back. I just needed time. And kidnapping me? I asked. Was that a loan too? Borrowing my life. He looked at me with pure hatred. You always stood in the way. You and your money and your smug little judgments. You think you're so smart? You're just a lonely old relic sitting on a pile of cash you didn't earn. I earned every penny, I said. And I earned the right to protect my family from trash like you. He lunged. Not at me but toward the back door. It was a desperate, animal movement. He knocked over the wine bottle, sending a red stain spreading across the tablecloth like blood. Don't! Emma screamed. He tore open the sliding glass door and sprinted into the backyard. I didn't move. I just took a sip of my wine. Mom! Do something. He's getting away. Emma cried, tears streaming down her face. I already did, I said calmly. Outside, the motion sensor floodlights blazed to life, illuminating the yard like a stage. And stepping out from behind my prize-winning hydrangeas were Detective Chan and 2 uniformed officers. I watched through the glass as they tackled him. It wasn't graceful. He slipped on the wet grass and went down face-first into the mulch I just laid down last week. Emma sobbed into her hands, her body shaking. I stood up and walked around the table to hold her. I pressed her head against my shoulder, smelling her shampoo, feeling her heart break. I know, baby, I whispered. I know it hurts. But it's better to cry over the truth than smile at a lie. We watched them handcuff him. We watched them read him his rights. And as they marched him to the car, he looked back at the house. He saw me standing there. and I raised my wine glass to him. Checkmate. But stories like this don't end with the arrest. Oh no. If you think the handcuffs are the end, you haven't been paying attention to how the legal system works. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in the district attorney's office. The air smelled of stale coffee and old paper. "He's making a deal," the DA told me, looking uncomfortable. "What kind of deal?" I asked. "He claims he wasn't the mastermind." "He claims." "Well, Mrs. Brennan, he claims he was working for you." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "Me? I hired a hitman to kidnap myself." "His story is that you were partners," the DA said, sliding a file across the desk. "He says you wanted to hide assets from the IRS. He says you staged the theft to create a tax loss. He says the kidnapping plot was a way to launder money, pay the ransom to an offshore account you control, then claim it as a theft. He says the tracker was your idea to make it look authentic, but you got cold feet and turned him in to save yourself." "That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard," I said. "It is," the DA agreed. "But it's his word against yours. And he has detailed knowledge of your finances. He's saying the fact that you investigated him yourself instead of calling the police right away proves you were trying to cover your tracks first. He's painting you as the Black Widow, and himself as the naive younger man you manipulated." My blood ran cold. I had played the game, but I had played it too close to the chest. My delay, my desire to catch him perfectly, had given him an opening. The trial began 4 months later. It was a circus. Derek's lawyer was a shark in a cheap suit, strutting around the courtroom pointing a finger at me. "Look at her," he shouted during his opening statement. "A former history teacher? No. A financial genius. A woman who turned a few pennies into $8 million. Do you really believe this sweet, innocent grandmother was duped by my client? Or is she the one pulling the strings?" I sat there, listening to them tear apart my character. They questioned my grief for Richard. They questioned my relationship with Emma. They made me sound like a monster. And the worst part? Emma had to listen to it. I watched her in the gallery, shrinking smaller and smaller every day. Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the stand. I didn't wear my power suit. I wore a soft blue cardigan. I wore my reading glasses on a chain. I looked every minute of my 63 years. "Mrs. Brennan," the defense attorney sneered. "You admit you put the tracker on the truck. That's a sophisticated move for a scared old lady, isn't it?" I leaned into the microphone. "It wasn't sophisticated, sir. It was desperate. When you are a mother, and you realize a wolf is in the house, you don't ask for permission. You grab a shovel. And the money? You didn't notice $37,000 missing." I looked at the jury. I saw 3 women in the back row. Mothers. Grandmothers. I looked right at them. "I didn't know," I said softly, "because I didn't want to know. When you get to my age and you are alone, truly alone, and a young man comes into your life who treats you like you matter, who asks about your day, who fixes the leaky faucet, you put blinders on. You want to believe that you are still worth loving, not just worth robbing." I saw one of the jurors wipe her eye. "I trusted him," I continued, my voice breaking just enough. "I trusted him with my car. I trusted him with my money. But most of all, I trusted him with my daughter's heart. And that is the only crime I am guilty of. Being a mother who wanted her child to be happy so badly that she ignored the warnings." The silence in the courtroom was different than the silence in my house. It was heavy with empathy. Then, the prosecutor stood up for the cross-examination of Derek. And this is where the trap snapped shut. "Mr. Morrison," the prosecutor said, holding up a file. "You claim Mrs. Brennan was the mastermind, that she directed you to steal this money to hide it." "Yes," Derek said, confident now. "She called the shots. I was just the errand boy." "And the other women?" Derek blinked. "What other women? Margaret Wellington in Sarasota? Helen Rodriguez in Phoenix? Janet Pierce in Charleston? Did Clara Brennan direct you to steal their life savings too? Did she tell you to romance them, drain their accounts, and leave them destitute 5 years before she even met you?" The courtroom gasped. The DA had found them. The investigation I had started, the private investigator I had hired, we had given it all to the prosecution. That's not relevant," Derek stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. It is highly relevant, the prosecutor boomed. Because unless Mrs. Brennan has been running a nationwide crime syndicate with you for 12 years, starting when you were in your 20s and she was grading history papers, then your story falls apart. You have a pattern, Mr. Morrison. You hunt lonely women. You thought Clara Brennan was just another sheep. You didn't realize you were walking into a lion's den. Derek looked at me. For the first time, the mask was gone completely. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was. A bully who had been punched in the nose. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Attempted kidnapping, wire fraud, identity theft, elder abuse. The judge, a woman who looked like she took no nonsense, sentenced him to 28 years in federal prison. As they led him away, the chains on his ankles clinking, he didn't look back. But Emma did. She squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry I brought him here. Don't be, I said, pulling her close and kissing her forehead. We survived. And now we rebuild. And we did. In the months since the trial, Emma and I haven't just been recovering. We've been building. We used the restitution money, what little was recovered from his offshore accounts, to start the Brennan Foundation. We help older women protect their assets. We teach financial literacy. We teach them how to spot the red flags, the sudden affection, the isolation, the requests for access. I tell them my story. I tell them about the purse dropping in the garage. I tell them about the tracker. I tell them about the truck to Canada. I tell them that it's okay to be suspicious. I learned something through all of this. I learned that society tells women of a certain age that we should be quiet, grateful, and invisible. We should sit in our rocking chairs and fade away. But they forget that we are the ones who survived everything life threw at us. We buried husbands. We raised children. We balanced budgets during recessions. We are made of steel and memories. Derek Morrison made the mistake of seeing only the gray hair and the cardigan. He didn't see the woman who built a fortune from scratch. He didn't see the mother who would burn the world down to protect her child. So to all the Davids and Derek's out there, watching from the shadows looking for an easy mark, be careful which grandma you try to cross. She might just pack your tracker on a semi-truck to Alberta and send you to prison for the next 3 decades. And to you listening to this, check your car. Check your bank accounts. But mostly check in with yourself. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Your intuition is the most expensive security system you own. Don't turn it off just because someone smiles at you. I'm Clara Brennan. I'm 64 years old. I'm single, I'm rich, and I'm armed with the truth. And let me tell you, freedom tastes a lot better than that roast chicken ever did. If this story struck a chord with you, if you've ever had to stand up for yourself when everyone thought you should sit down, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Have you ever had a gut feeling that saved you? Tell me about it. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We have to stick together after all. You never know when you might need a friend to help you check under the car. Stay safe, darlings. And stay sharp.